Have you ever wondered how a single cable lying on the ocean floor could determine whether your country remains sovereign in the digital age? Right now, as you watch this video, there are invisible threads of control wrapping around America's most critical infrastructure, and most people have no idea it's happening. You probably think about cybersecurity in terms of hackers and passwords, but what if I told you the real threat isn't coming through your computer screen? It's buried beneath thousands of feet of seawater and hidden in the cell towers dotting rural America? This isn't some distant geopolitical chess game that doesn't affect you. This is about the very networks that carry your calls, your emails, your bank transactions, and even the communications that could determine America's response in a national emergency. What you're about to discover will change how you see every text message you send and every call you make, because the truth is, we've been quietly surrendering control of our digital lifeline to a strategic rival one cable at a time. The scale of what's happening is staggering, and it started in the most unexpected places. While everyone was focused on trade wars and military posturing, Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE were systematically embedding themselves into America's telecommunications backbone. We're talking about equipment positioned within miles of nuclear missile silos in Montana and Wyoming, cell towers that can intercept the most classified military communications, and undersea cables that carry 99% of global internet traffic. The FBI discovered that Huawei equipment near Malmstrom Air Force Base and F.E. Warren Air Force Base was capable of capturing and disrupting communications from U.S. Strategic Command, the organization responsible for America's nuclear arsenal. Think about that for a moment. The infrastructure that could detect an incoming nuclear attack or coordinate America's response is potentially compromised by equipment controlled by a foreign adversary. But here's where it gets even more concerning. Under China's National Intelligence Law of 2017, every Chinese citizen and company is legally obligated to cooperate with state intelligence agencies. This means Huawei, ZTE, and HMN Technologies aren't just telecommunications companies. They're extensions of the Chinese state. They cannot refuse Beijing's requests for data or access, no matter what their executives claim in Congress. Rural American communities, struggling with limited budgets and minimal options, became the perfect entry points. Chinese companies offered equipment at prices so low they seemed impossible, and cash-strapped rural carriers couldn't afford to say no. What they didn't realize was that they were essentially installing listening posts for Chinese intelligence services. Hold on a second. I need to ask you something really direct. Have you ever felt that unsettling feeling when you realize something massive is happening behind the scenes, something that could affect your entire way of life, and you had no idea it was going on? That moment when you discover that decisions made in boardrooms and government offices thousands of miles away are reshaping your world without your knowledge or consent? Look, you're not alone in feeling this way. Thousands of people watch this channel with that exact same sense of unease about how vulnerable our digital infrastructure really is. And you know what strikes me most? How rarely people talk about feeling powerless when they learn about these massive geopolitical shifts, as if admitting uncertainty somehow makes them less informed. But today, I want to break that silence. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by how quickly the world is changing and worried about what it means for your security and privacy, write in the comments. I worry about our digital security too. That's it. Because when you share that concern, you're not just acknowledging reality, you're helping someone else realize they're not alone in caring about America's technological sovereignty. Go ahead, share that thought below. The submarine cable network represents an even more critical vulnerability that most Americans never think about. These underwater fiber optic cables, stretching 1.4 million kilometers across ocean floors, carry over 99% of international internet traffic and facilitate $10 trillion in daily financial transactions. Every email you send internationally, every video call with family overseas, every stock transaction, every military communication travels through these cables. For decades, American, European, and Japanese companies dominated this market. But China's HMN Technologies, formerly Huawei Marine Networks, has quietly become the fourth largest submarine cable builder globally, participating in nearly 100 cable projects and installing over 100,000 kilometers of cables worldwide. What makes this particularly dangerous is China's development of gray zone warfare tactics targeting these cables. In March 2025, China unveiled a deep-sea cable-cutting ship capable of slicing through reinforced undersea infrastructure at depths of 4,000 meters. This vessel features a diamond-coated grinding wheel spinning at 1,600 RPM, powerful enough to breach armored cable sheaths while maintaining plausible deniability. Multiple submarine cable disruptions near Taiwan earlier this year were linked to Chinese vessels operating under deceptive identities. These weren't accidents, they were tests of capability and resolve. China is demonstrating that it can sever the digital lifelines connecting America to its allies whenever it chooses. The American response has been significant, but insufficient. Congress passed the Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act in 2020, creating a rip and replace program to remove Chinese equipment from U.S. networks. The program initially allocated $1.9 billion to help small telecommunications companies replace Huawei and ZTE equipment with secure alternatives. But the actual cost ballooned to nearly $5 billion, creating a $3 billion funding shortfall that left rural carriers receiving only 40 cents on the dollar for replacement costs. Some carriers couldn't afford to complete the removals and began shutting down service areas, leaving rural Americans with reduced coverage while Chinese equipment remained in place near sensitive military installations. The Biden administration also formalized Team Telecom, an interagency committee that reviews telecommunications applications for national security risks. This group successfully blocked Chinese involvement in several major submarine cable projects, including the Bay-to-Bay Express cable that would have connected Hong Kong directly to California. But for every project they stop, others find alternative routes or use shell companies to obscure Chinese involvement. The FCC announced new regulations in July 2025 to ban undersea cables using Chinese technology from connecting to U.S. networks. But implementing these rules across the existing global network presents enormous technical and diplomatic challenges. Perhaps most alarming is the Salt Typhoon hacking campaign, China's most extensive cyber espionage operation to date. This sophisticated attack infiltrated over 200 targets across more than 80 countries, including at least 9 major U.S. telecommunications companies. Chinese hackers gained access to private communications, call records, and sensitive law enforcement data from American political leaders and government officials. More than 1 million Americans had their metadata stolen, and security officials warn the campaign remains ongoing and likely larger in scope than initially understood. The hackers exploited the very infrastructure dependencies that Chinese companies helped create, turning America's telecommunications networks into collection platforms for Chinese intelligence services. The economic implications extend far beyond direct infrastructure costs. China's state-led investment in its semiconductor industry has exceeded $197 billion since 2014, while Chinese companies offer telecommunications equipment at artificially low prices subsidized by government funding. This creates market distortions that American and allied companies cannot match through commercial competition alone. The U.S. CHIPS and Science Act authorized $52 billion for domestic semiconductor manufacturing. But this investment faces significant challenges given China's massive domestic market and coordinated industrial policy. Looking ahead, the competition is intensifying across multiple fronts. China aims to capture 60% of the global subsea cable market by 2025. While expanding its Digital Silk Road initiative to create strategic dependencies in developing nations. In Africa, Chinese companies already control nearly 70% of 4G infrastructure and dominate smartphone markets. The Peace submarine cable, built by Chinese company Hengtong, provides internet connectivity across the continent, demonstrating China's growing control over digital infrastructure in regions where Western companies see too much risk or too little profit. The vulnerabilities this creates aren't abstract future concerns. They're immediate operational realities. Chinese control over telecommunications infrastructure enables sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations that compromise American national security in real time. The positioning of Chinese equipment near nuclear facilities, military bases, and critical infrastructure creates persistent monitoring capabilities that could provide early warning of U.S. military movements or enable disruption of command and control systems during a crisis. Every piece of Chinese equipment in American networks represents a potential backdoor for intelligence collection or sabotage operations. Building resilient alternatives requires treating digital infrastructure as a core national security priority rather than a secondary commercial concern. This includes developing redundant systems, improving international coordination with trusted allies, and establishing clear rules for protecting critical digital pathways. The private sector, including major technology companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon, are investing heavily in submarine cable projects to extend high-speed internet globally, while reducing dependence on potentially compromised Chinese infrastructure. But these efforts must be coordinated with government security requirements and allied nation policies to be truly effective. Look, I know that learning about these hidden vulnerabilities in our digital infrastructure can be genuinely unsettling, especially when you realize how much of your daily life depends on networks that might not be as secure as you thought. You probably came to this video expecting to learn about some distant geopolitical issue, but instead discovered that this affects everything from your phone calls, to your financial transactions, to your country's national security. That's exactly why I created this channel, to help people like you understand the real-world implications of these massive technological and geopolitical shifts that mainstream media often glosses over or ignores completely. Here you won't find academic theories or bureaucratic jargon, but practical analysis that helps you make sense of how these changes actually impact your life, your security, and your future. If you want to stay informed about these critical developments that shape our world from behind the scenes, consider subscribing to the channel. This isn't about building a massive audience. It's about creating a community of thoughtful people who want to understand the forces reshaping our world before those changes blindside them. The subscribe button is right there below this video, and I'd be honored to have you join us as we navigate these complex realities together. Your awareness and engagement make all the difference in building the kind of informed society that can respond effectively to these challenges.